The video that you're about to watch is an excerpt from a live webinar. If you enjoy the contents of this video, please like and subscribe. I'd love to hear your comments. Thanks for watching. The question has to do with situations of collective trauma that arose in the past, suffering, and generations who continue to hold this trauma, the ancestors who perpetuated the trauma. And in her case, she's referencing the suffering of the indigenous people of North America at the hands of the white settlers when they were coming in. And, you know, how this was going on all the way to like 1996. It doesn't say in the write-up, but I followed up on her email and, you know, I watched the video and read the articles and stuff. Oh yeah, it does say last residential school closed in 1996. It is in her email here. But anyway, the point is that actually, yesterday was Reconciliation Day, Truth and Reconciliation Day. And I was looking at this. And the way it looks as if the trauma has moved, because obviously, you know, the schools are closed and those individuals who are the victims of these essentially cultural crimes are, you know, there's some that are still with us now that are elderly, but, you know, many of the victims who suffered the most died. And so they're not here in the body anymore. And I'm sure it's evident that when people pass out of the body, they look back and they see the whole thing in perspective and they understand why they had to go through, why their soul chose to be born at that time in that, right? Because it's the deep desire of the heart that aligns the lifetime to come into being at a certain time in history, in a certain place in history, you know, and I mean, it doesn't justify, there's no justification for that kind of horrible, unspeakable indignation placed upon people, especially sweet, innocent people. But the trauma seems to transfer to the land. That's what I see happening. And I see it happening again and again. You guys, you've seen it. I'm sure you've all seen it also with residences and locations. You know, if there's a house in which somebody at one time lived and it was just a very, very difficult, maybe there was some abusive situation there or something, then the building itself will take on the energy of that. And, you know, future residents down the road can, maybe the next residents aren't so sensitive or they don't care or whatever, they have their own issues, whatever, but somewhere down the road, somebody moves into the house and they're sensitive. And I know that many of you know what that's like, to be very, very sensitive to energies. Like that's why you're here. That's why we're doing this together. And you can go into a place like that and you're just like, ooh, something's not okay. Because the trauma, like our earth has this incredible, there's like a convection process that's happening from the hot molten center of the earth out to the surface, and it's sort of churning, and it's churning and restructuring everything all the time. So hang on. So the trauma moves. Now, some of the trauma is also held in the epigenome of the individuals, both physiologies of the perpetrators and the physiologies of the victims. I'm just saying that some aspects of it are softened because some of the energy does move to the earth. And the earth actually doesn't have that much problem dealing with all kinds of stuff. I mean, you know, a kind of like very big, explosive, huge things the earth does, right? I'm just thinking about the hurricane that's ripping through the south of the United States right now, and how that area's got its own little history of perpetrators and victims. And so when something like, and people can say, well, how or why would something like that happen? Oh, and interesting that it's been doing it actually on the same day that's celebrated in Canada for Truth and Reconciliation. So what's happening in Canada? Consciously, intentionally, people are saying, okay, we're setting aside this time to actually deal with this issue and situation from the level of our intelligence and our consciousness and our love, and we're going to do it. And meanwhile, the earth is like, oh, look, here's another area where physiologically I'm dealing with that same energy, so I'm going to come in and do some restructuring. So it's happening on the level of consciousness in one place, it's happening on the physiological level in another place. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. Neural connections being made. Neural connections. To support the process taking place on a global scale, on the scale of the earth. The earth is rising up to support transformation on the level of physiology, our individual physiologies. Earth is like our mama. She's our guide. She's our teacher. And she shows us, this is how you do. This is what you do. And it's like a lesson that the fortunate ones, those of us who are not gripped, are able to make the neural connection between what Earth is doing and what our nervous systems need to do, and then allowing that process to happen in the same way that nature does it, modeling ourselves after nature. And essentially, it's just a letting go. It's just saying, oh, I see there's a pattern here. And all we have to do is just say, okay, then so be it. And may it be as is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. And may it just be, may that same process, it's happening globally. Now, may that integrate into my physiology and become part of my model and my process by which I do the same thing. Ancestors, for the ancestors. The ancestors receive. And the only thing that we're doing, this is do less and accomplish more, right? What we're doing is we're just making the neural connection. We're just recognizing, because we are cells on the body of the earth. The earth goes through a thing and it's activated. It's literally, I mean, I bow down to the people of Canada and honor them for having recognized this so nicely that they were like, oh, let's do this on the level of consciousness. Let's intentionally do this thing. Because by doing that, they set up a resonance on the level of consciousness that helped to kind of counterbalance what was going on with the hurricane, and very much supportive of a transformation that's permanent for the people, for the ancestors. It's not that we go back and we can't go back again. It's like, as I was saying earlier, you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to obliterate that thing. You can't go back and undo what happened. What happened happened. But what it does is it shifts the way our world understands and experiences and utilizes those memories and those events. It utilizes them in a way that the same mistake doesn't happen again. But also within ourselves, because the excess and deficiency within our own beings gives rise to situations, internal situations for us as individuals that are like perpetrator and victim, right? The victim is the deficiency side and the perpetrator is the excess side. So what it's doing is it's setting up a condition on the external, the earth. The earth is going, look, I'm showing you what to do and how to do it. And then we're like, oh, okay, we make that connection. I make that neural connection. What happens what happens with you is also happening within me. And then, and I accept that. I see it consciously, intentionally, and I understand the mechanics of it. And I'm using your example as a way of recognizing these mechanics in a very clean and detailed way. And then I'm allowing and this has to do with the healing that we just did with boundaries, right? I'm allowing this to help be a guide for me, to help me sort of narrow in to where my balance is, so it never becomes too deficient, not too much victimhood, and not too much excess or too much perpetrator. But I find this, when I find the balance, then I can enjoy the diversity of the material world. I can place myself so that the differences and the details of this world glorify thy being. Glorify you, Mother Divine. Glorify you, source of creation. It's a shift. It's taking place deep inside. And I see it with most people here. I see that shift happening in a very systemically. So that tells me it's deep down. It's in the cells. It's in the DNA. It's in the nucleus of the cells, right? It's down around the epigenome and the DNA. That's what this session is about anyway. So of course, marvelous question.